Democratic Citizenship is a senior-level political science course that was offered at the University of Alberta, Canada in 2009. Designed and taught by Dr. David Kihane, the course focused on theories of citizen participation as well as deliberation that are sometimes brought under the heading of deliberative democracy. What these theories have in common is an understanding of citizenship that is anchored not only on voting and having rights, as liberal theories suggest, but also on taking part in policy making, having a say and being heard. In the classroom, the process of learning was guided by a method of inquiry-based instruction, such that the course challenged students to confront critical questions on deliberative democracy. These questions revolved around the issues of legitimacy, fairness, and inclusion of participatory practices. For example, who should participate in citizens' assemblies? Who should be setting the agenda? How do power relations affect the outcomes? And what conditions should be met for a deliberation to be considered legitimate?
Students in Dr. Kihane's class took up these questions through theoretical readings, but also by investigating a variety of participatory exercises that brought citizens into policy making. Dense articles by Habermas, Ben-Habib and Iris Young, to mention just a few scholars, were complemented by articles and discussions on case studies. The latter were taken also from a large archival research on citizen participation in the Global South, archive which was assembled by the Development Research Center on Citizenship, Participation and Accountability, or DRC. The inclusion of this research into the class material contributed to a distinctly international comparative dimension, as case studies taken from southern contexts juxtaposed with examples from North America, Europe and Australia. In the following interview, David Kihane explains the purpose that this international comparative dimension served.
I wanted to destabilize a narrative where we are an advanced democracy and nations in the South, political contexts in the South are learning from us. I think that in looking at the DRC cases, we really get that shaken up, and we see how some of our platitudes about democracy really hide complex relations of power and real democratic deficits.
But the study of deliberative democracy was not limited to reading and discussing a number of theory or praxis-oriented articles. In fact, students experienced hands-on what they were studying, as abstract notions were applied both to their learning experience and to the design of their class. In other words, the classroom itself became a laboratory for democratic and deliberative methods, a laboratory where 13 students learned about democratic theory by practicing democracy.
The class was structured as a democratic space where all members were encouraged both to define questions for the course and to suggest what to do in order to answer those questions. Students' involvement was so much sought after that in the first class meeting the instructor distributed copies of a provisional syllabus, which was to be subject to in-class discussion and deliberation. At first met with shock, the instructor's willingness to seek input from the students became a periodic exercise, during which different aspects of the course were discussed and made subject to modifications. In this way, students were able to shape and steer their own learning in ways that were consistent with their own interests, backgrounds, abilities, or needs.
I had the ability to direct where my education was going, which you don't get in a lot of classes. So I thought that aspect was really neat.
Not only were students the shapers of their own learning, but they were also its makers. In fact, the class took the form of a seminar where the students and the teacher engaged in a dialectical search for meaning through discussion and direct questioning. There was very little lecturing on the part of the instructor, which was done mainly to illuminate the most obscure theoretical readings. On the other hand, all members of the class were expected to participate based on a critical assessment of the readings. This expectation was reflected onto the grading scheme, which was heavily weighted on participation.
But participation involved much more than talking during a class discussion. It also involved contributing to the implementation of different class designs and facilitation methods. In fact, conventional seminar discussions alternated with small group discussions, guest lectures, and students-led classes. The latter became a periodic exercise in the second half of the semester, when students took their turn in presenting to fellow members a self-defined project, and in steering discussions that ensued from their presentations. People presenting on the same day were encouraged to coordinate their expositions and to plan the entire class accordingly. In other words, students took up the role of instructors, with the discretionary power to adopt the conversation and facilitation design they saw fit.
With students taking up responsibilities that are by tradition the instructor's prerogatives, the line demarcating the distinction between the instructor and the students blurred. The traditional teacher-student hierarchy came to be replaced with a model of equality and respect, as each member of the class had both the capacity and the responsibility for teaching as well as learning. Thus, students became constructors and interpreters of knowledge, and the instructor a co-learner, though one with more information and more experience. The class underwent a process whereby, in Paulo Freire's words,
the teacher of the students and the students of the teacher cease to exist and a new term emerges: teacher-student and student-teachers.